A new study published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry this month with the complex title, SARS-CoV-2 spike ectodomain targets alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. It was more bad news about the spike, showing how nature somehow rapidly evolved the spike protein in parallel to lots of other existing deadly diseases and poisons. Here's the knockout part of the study, right from the article's abstract. The SARS-CoV-2 glycoprotein contains a neurotoxin-like region that has sequence similarities to the rabies virus and the HIV glycoproteins, as well as to snake neurotoxins, which interact with nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, NACHR, subtypes via this region. Snake venom. The researchers discovered neurotoxic, snake venom-like genetic characteristics within the spike protein. It confirms drive. Brian Artis concerns, who faced ridicule and exclusion from medical freedom conferences after he discussed the similarities between the spike protein and snake venom on the Stu Peters show. Snake venom usually shows up in snakes, not viruses. Somebody owes Brian Artis an apology. I'm only a lawyer, not a virologist, but I could not find a single other virus that has ever been described as having neurotoxic features similar to snake venom. Feel free to correct me, but it looks like a truly novel feature of this virus that supposedly somehow evolved naturally in a Chinese bat cave, at least according to human cockroach Tony Fauci. Maybe the snakes were getting cuddly with the bats or something. You'd think scientists would be marveling at this evolutionary miracle that completely defies our understanding of how viruses evolve in the wild. You'd think. Instead, the scientists are strangely silent. The study also demonstrated astonishing genetic similarities between SARS-CoV-2 and rabies, which coincidentally is a central nervous system antagonist much like snake venom, as well as recurring genetic characteristics resembling HIV. It is truly remarkable how nature really outdid itself, exhibiting wild creativity by evolving genetic features of rabies, snake venom, and the human immunodeficiency virus into the common cold within the evolutionary period of about a half nanosecond. What are the odds? The unlikely chances for such natural convergent evolution in the coronavirus's genetic makeup are negligible to the point of ludicrous impossibility. When will scientists stop dancing around the obvious so we can start seriously looking for WHO made the virus? Anyway, when people took the safe and effective shots to prevent a mild cold, did they realize they were forcing their bodies to make safe and effective fragments of unsafe and not at all effective neurotoxic snake venom, rabies, and HIV, for months and months and months? There was more bad news for the shots. A remarkable new peer-reviewed paper published in the journal Vaccines this month titled, IgG4 antibodies induced by repeated vaccination may generate immune tolerance to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. The 5 major antibody types. IgG4 is a subtype related to the part of the immune system that handles allergies. Last year we saw the first study, not peer-reviewed, claiming a class shift in antibody types in folks taking booster shots. Even COVIDians were distressed, commenting that, if it were true, it would be a disaster. Now we have a peer-reviewed study confirming the IgG4 class shift. The study was remarkable for more than just confirming the class-shifting mechanism. I can't say I've ever seen this kind of blunt criticism about the jabs in a study from a major journal before. Normally these studies always carefully parrot the magic words about the jab's safety and efficacy, and the ultra-rareness of any side effects. But right out of the gate, this peer-reviewed study's abstract stabbed the jabs right in their little myocardic hearts. As the immunity provided by these vaccines rapidly wanes, their ability to prevent hospitalization and severe disease in individuals with comorbidities has recently been questioned, and increasing evidence has shown that, as with many other vaccines, they do not produce sterilizing immunity, allowing people to suffer frequent reinfections. Oh boy! The study's authors knowingly placed themselves squarely sideways with the world's largest, best funded, and most vindictive government health bureaucracy, the dystopian Centers for Disease Control, which continues to insist in spite of all evidence to the contrary that COVID vaccination magically prevent death or even hospitalization for COVID infections. But it got even better. Next, the authors got to the point. The vaccine-induced IgG4 antibody class shift, which we've discussed on C&C before, is a problem, not a feature, a potentially deadly problem. Recent investigations have found abnormally high levels of IgG4 in people who were administered 2 or more injections of the mRNA vaccines. Emerging evidence suggests that the reported increase in IgG4 levels detected after repeated vaccination with the mRNA vaccines may not be a protective mechanism. Rather, it constitutes an immune tolerance mechanism to the spike protein that could promote unopposed SARS-CoV-2 infection and replication by suppressing natural antiviral responses. Increased IgG4 synthesis due to repeated mRNA vaccination with high antigen concentrations may also cause autoimmune diseases, and promote cancer growth and autoimmune myocarditis in susceptible individuals. My goodness. What they're saying is, the safe and effective jabs could make people's immune systems respond with tolerance, ignoring the spike protein altogether, since the body can't get rid of it. Its own cells keep making the damn things, and tolerance of spike could lead to 1. Autoimmune diseases, 2. Cancer growth, and 3. Autoimmune myocarditis. By autoimmune myocarditis, they mean that the body is attacking its own heart. That can't be good. And it definitely wasn't good news for people who have dormant cancers. I wonder if all the people who took the safest vaccines ever created would have wanted to know about this potential teeny-tiny problem before making their decisions. It's a terrific study with massive implications, and I just don't have time to do it justice. But here's one of my favorite sections. It is worth noting that there are conflicting pieces of information about the level of protection offered by these vaccines. Although the Center for Disease Control, CDC, in the United States has stated that throughout the pandemic, mortality rates have been higher in the unvaccinated than in the vaccinated, the data in the United Kingdom contradict the CDC's findings. Specifically, the Office for National Statistics, ONS, in the United Kingdom has reported that from April to mid-November 2021, deaths in unvaccinated people were higher in comparison with vaccinated people who had received a second vaccine dose. However, from the end of November 2021 to December 2022, this situation reverted. Deaths were higher in vaccinated people who received a third vaccine dose compared with the unvaccinated. Haha, the CDC's statements were contradicted by UK data. Good one. They were really saying the CDC is useless. The researchers also suggested the IgG4 class shift as a potential explanation for the sky-high Western excess mortality rates, which is the first time I've seen any mainstream source suggest there might be a link between the jabs and the deaths. In other words, some scientists are starting to grapple with the excess mortality problem and they are looking at the right potential cause. And even more remarkably, this study somehow survived peer review and publication in the major journal Vaccines. It's a big deal. If I had to guess, this verifiable class shifting mechanism is why the CDC cancelled boosters last month and is now shifting to an annual booster schedule. If you plan to read only one study this year, this might be the one to read. At the beginning of the month, award-winning chef and MasterChef Australia host Jock Zonfrillo, 46, died suddenly. Jock Zonfrillo, father of 4, center. Jock was married with 4 kids. I had to review dozens of articles to find one mentioning anything about his cause of death. The Daily Mail UK ran a follow-up story about Jock's 22-year-old daughter, but included this about the night of the cooking star's death. The police who were let into Zonfrillo's room found him dead in his bed and saw no signs of anything unusual or suspicious. There was no drug paraphernalia located, no one else in the room, and police formed the view Zonfrillo had died of natural causes. There you have it. The 46-year-old father of 4 died suddenly from natural causes. Happens all the time. Well, it happens all the time these days. The articles described in great detail what Jock had to overcome in his life to finally make it to running a successful chain of restaurants and having his own show, great marriage, and lovely family. He overcame a lot. But he couldn't overcome the shots. I'm not sure why this article tickled my funny bone so much, but the Epoch Times ran a story this weekend headlined, "Most infected in COVID outbreak at CDC conference were vaccinated, agency confirms." An outbreak at a CDC conference. What are the odds? Last month in April, the CDC held a multi-day conference ending with a bunch of attendees self-reporting COVID infections, followed by a survey of all the other attendees, to find out how many people got infected at the CDC's superspreader event. The first hilarious fact was that, of the 1,800 attending, a full 20%, 360, ignored the CDC's nosy survey, preferring not to share their COVID statuses with the government health agency. Or maybe they just didn't bother to test for COVID, so they couldn't really answer at all. Or both. Of the rest, 10% of the total, 180, said they tested positive for the virus. My gosh. What kind of reckless scientists does the CDC hang around with these days? Were they masking? Shielding? Social distancing? Were they standing behind their plexiglass safety shields? Did they at least get free sanitizers? They must have done something wrong. It's not like COVID spreads itself. You just can't beat the fact that the conference bragged about its 100% vaccinated rate. Of course, given the bad optics, the CDC strained to find some good news, which it smugly said was that none of the 180 infected attendees had to go to the hospital, proving the jabs work or something. The truth is, they probably knew better than anybody not to go to the hospital, if they even got a serious case, that is. Now contrast the CDC's self-righteous jab efficacy claims with last month's Cleveland Clinic study of 51,000 hospital employees, which concluded, effectiveness was not demonstrated when the XBB lineages were dominant. 1. And compare the CDC's lies with a story published earlier this month in the Epoch Times about a new Danish jab study. Headlined, Messenger RNA COVID-19 vaccines had no effect on overall mortality. Trial data reanalysis. The study concluded the Pfizer and Moderna shots did not show any benefit for overall mortality. No effect. So, of course, at this point the COVID hospitalization rate is so low you wouldn't expect any of the CDC's attendees to have been hospitalized in the first place, proving the CDC can't do basic math. Which explains a lot when you think about it. They're scientists, not mathematicians, after all. Nor did the CDC calculate waning jab efficacy. What was the last booster date for the conference goers? Remember, this is the same government health agency that recommended outdoor masking, until it was shamed into dropping that guidance, due to being ridiculed by none less than the Washington Post and the New York Times. Anyway, after reading the conference story, I was left with an abiding sense that the greatest danger from COVID these days comes from the CDC itself, obviously a massive superspreading bureaucracy, and so we have no choice but to disband the agency. To save grandma, but reluctantly, appreciating all the good it's done over the years, like helping create that cholera epidemic in Haiti, and not because we want to pull the plug, but only because we must. Now that I think about it, we should probably also tear down the CDC's Atlanta headquarters, right to the ground, and make it into a memorial park for the victims of communitarianism. That seems appropriate.